Okay. Welcome everybody to another video lecture on the Jedi Circle. This, I want to say week, but that really hasn't been the case due to my ever-changing schedule. So let's say this video's topic is on the misconception of compassion. It's definitely interesting misconception to have. Certainly one of the more famous lines in Star Wars in relation to compassion is from Anakin Skywalker in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, in which he presents his view that compassion is central to a Jedi's life. And certainly, perhaps within his reasoning, maybe so. But it is a misconception rather, in the actual Jedi Path. But it's a great misconception to have. Way better to be viewed and thought of as compassionate than apathetic, right? So apathy is definitely kind of not the direction we're going with this. While our other misconceptions on religion and Star Wars might help you understand this better, we talked about it, right? So the misconception of Star Wars is not that we ignore Star Wars. It's not that we disregard Star Wars, but it's that there's a specific way we look at it, and there's a specific way we seek to apply it in our everyday lives. Same with religion, right? We didn't say that the Jedi Path is dynamically opposed to religion, or that we're against religion, or that Jedi cannot be a religion. Simply that there is a much broader view of these topics. So my computer froze up. No idea how that looked like live on video. So we'll just go with that. But these topics are obviously much broader in the scope than what a lot of people come into the path thinking. They think, oh, Jedi, you're compassionate. But there's not really an understanding of what that means or what that word means. It's usually meant to be a nice thing, right? It's usually meant to be a complimentary thing, which is good. As I said, not a bad misconception to have. However, the misconception comes with the fact that compassion is an emotional product, and Jedi have established a pretty clear view of emotions and the role they play within our lives. If you look at the first line of the Jedi Code, and you can go with the 1987 or the 1996 version, either one. But if you say there is no emotion, there's peace, or emotion yet peace, either way, there tends to be a kind of understanding that Jedi appreciate the emotions for what they are. And that is they're guides. They're informative. They're there to tell you something about the situation, and more importantly, something about yourself. When you get mad at something, that informs you about you. It informs you about your worldview, about the way you view things and kind of what you value. This goes for happiness. This goes for joy. This goes for things that make you laugh. It goes for everything. Compassion is the same way. It is an emotional response to an outside stimuli. The definition of compassion, dictionary-wise, is a feeling of pity or sympathy to others who are suffering, often accompanied by a strong feeling to alleviate that suffering. And the reason this gets put on the Jedi, the reason that a lot of people look at Jedi as compassionate, is because Jedi do have a foundation in helping others. If you look at the Jedi rules of behavior, one of the things is public service. And there's also 3 other things in the Jedi rules of behavior that you can also find, or that we're going to discuss later on in the 5 goals of the Jedi. And those 3 things are to render aid, provide support, and defend those in need. These often put Jedi at the forefront of things of such as community service, of helping other people out, and little things too, because those goals can be fulfilled in little ways. But little things such as being there for a friend, or helping someone go through a difficult time, or even just helping someone move, right, from location to location. All of these things are just ways that Jedi do help. And it's, a lot of the times it's misconstrued as compassion. I think a lot of times what it might be, what might be getting labeled as compassion is empathy. But again, that's falling to that emotional side of things, which isn't bad. It's connecting with people in a very in those circumstances, in a tough situation, and that they're in a tough situation and you want to do something to help, right? And that's great. Having that desire and having that emotion are not bad things. And we are not saying, I am not saying, and the misconception is not saying, not to have those feelings and not to have those emotions, but that they must be treated as all other emotions that Jedi work with. Knee-jerk reactions are what Jedi are kind of stepping away from, right? We want emotional stability. We want you to feel openly and fully, without the need to have those knee-jerk reaction responses. Something makes you mad, you punch it, right? We don't want that. As the saying goes, don't make decisions when you're angry. Don't make promises when you're happy. So with compassion, don't just jump in right away. There are factors that you do need to consider. There are different ways to help. It's not always about the short term, right? In all our emotions, when we really feel a strong emotion, it tends to gear us towards the most immediate satisfaction, right? The most immediate thing we can do right in that instant that will make us feel like we've done something to respond to that situation. But that isn't often the best thing, right? That isn't our emotions don't often lead us to the proper immediate response. So we want to be able to feel and to acknowledge what we're feeling, to accept the information that's being given, to listen to what our body and our mind is telling us when we are met with the various people and situations that we will come across in life. We will feel a wide array of emotions, and that's good. And you want to feel those, man. It adds to life. It's a beautiful thing. So feel. That's great. But not feeling doesn't make you any more or less of a Jedi, right? If there's going to be times as a Jedi, you are going to be angry. You're going to feel anger. You're going to feel fear. You're going to have to battle. There's a lot of Jedi that have to battle with things like depression. There are Jedi who have to going through tough situations, emotionally, things like divorce or the loss of a loved one. And these can lead to some dark moments. And don't read too much. It's not Star Wars dark. Let's not get there. Again, remember our misconception talk on Star Wars. But these can lead to some times that are very challenging, especially on an emotional level, and that's fine. Feeling those emotions, going through those things, doesn't make anyone less of a Jedi. just like having an overabundance of compassion and empathy doesn't make someone more of a Jedi. It's simply individualistic, right? It's how we express and experience the world, and our emotional spectrum is going to vary from person to person, and that's okay. What matters is how we live, how we act, and how we respond to the emotional proddings that we do experience. So that's the misconception here, is that Jedi are just these very compassionate things. It works for some faiths and some paths out there. Compassion is highly touted. Again, not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. But for Jedi, what we focus on is more reasoning, understanding. It really is about looking at the situation as a whole and not getting emotional blinders put on. That is the main thing. That is part of the Jedi path, to be able to feel and to express oneself and to embrace the world as a whole, and not have any blinders put on you as a result. To be able to still function and think as a Jedi, and to react and act as a Jedi, given any situation at hand. These aren't always easy things, right? But there's certainly things that we look to do. And compassion is not something really that's a requirement for Jedi. You know, there was a Jedi I knew. I don't know what, they went off to go. They stopped dealing with the online community, and we ended up losing touch. But great Jedi, great person. They were in the path, and they really had this clash with the community. They just didn't feel they belonged. And they wanted to leave the Jedi path because they just didn't have that compassion. They didn't have compassion. Like say, when you see a homeless person outside, they felt bad that they didn't have that initial, compassionate reaction, that their mind went to a different place. And they felt, well, that must make me less of a Jedi. That must make me a bad person. They kind of felt this guilt and shame for it. And it wasn't the case. A person was a great person, and they were a great Jedi. And they really were able to work through that. We worked through that, talking it out. And it was about, well, what can be done? What's the solution? Why don't you feel compassion in that thing? Why don't you want to alleviate that suffering? It wasn't that they didn't want to. It was that they felt that they couldn't truly do anything, that donating there or giving them a little change or giving them a $5 wasn't enough, and it didn't work. And instead they wanted to focus on doing something better, doing something more, like attacking the problem. And that's great. That's still Jedi work there, right? That's still looking to resolve the issue, but he was looking at it in a different light. He had a much bigger and broader view of the situation, and thus the individual cases that he did see did not ignite the emotional reaction. But you get him talking on homeless epidemics in individual countries, and you'll have statistics, and it was an issue that he really actually did care about and had a lot of passion for. But individually, he wasn't emotionally reacting. So it didn't make him less of a Jedi. It didn't make him less of a person. It was just a different approach. And that's the problem. And it's kind of where the misconception of compassion was born out of him. And there was another girl, and there was a couple other Jedi. And it was all around the same time where compassion was really being pushed forward in the online Jedi community at the time as kind of this necessity. When what is the necessity in the Jedi path is how you live and how you act and the way you approach problems and the way you seek to kind of better the world, right? I often say that the Jedi path is world betterment through self-betterment. right? It's you start within and you kind of work outward to better the world around you. And if you're doing that, then the emotional spectrum that you feel doesn't determine whether or not you are a Jedi, okay? You can feel sad and still be a Jedi. You can feel compassion and still be not a Jedi. Let's keep it there. Not a Jedi, right? So, so that is where the major misconception. It is just a reminder that compassion is not a necessity, and not to if you meet someone who's giving you this story, I'm going to assume that we're still rolling and it's done freezing up. Okay. So, you know, if you meet someone who's giving you this rundown of, you know, the story, and you feel like you should be feeling compassion, or you should be that is the desired result, and you're not having it, that doesn't make you any less of a person. But look at things, you know, unfortunately, there are people out there who will also use compassion for negative reasons, right? They'll use it to rob people. They will use it to you know, put themselves ahead or take advantage of people. These do exist, unfortunately, and it's something. Be mindful. That's all this is. When you brush away the words that people are really attached to and the ideas that people are attached to, when you really get to the bottom of this, all we are saying is be mindful. Do not have the knee-jerk reaction. Approach a situation as a Jedi. You know, have your objectivity, have your awareness. You know, be patient. Think things through. You know, have the short term in mind, but also have the long term in mind. You know, you want to help people, but ask yourself, what is the best way to help people within any given situation, right? Because that's going to change from person to person, from situation to situation. So you got to approach each person and each situation kind of as its own deal. You use the Jedi Path, and you use these core teachings that we all have and that we all follow and we all live by. But even still, you present one situation with, you know, exact same people, and you give one Jedi a chance to approach it and resolve it. And you do that exact same situation over here, exact same people with a different Jedi. You're probably going to get two different approaches and two different outcomes. But both still working in line with the Jedi thought. You know, our path is very diverse. Our path, while being very laid out, right? We have very clear guidelines and rules of behavior and Jedi codes and all this other stuff that really, you know, kind of make a box for the Jedi. It's a pretty big box. All right. There's a lot of room in there. And compassion is just one of those things that falls in the human spectrum that certainly is going to be felt, that certainly is not, it is not discouraged at all, but does need to be approached through the Jedi filter, through the Jedi lens. I'm going to pause a second because I have some tea here that's getting cold. I'm going to take a sip of that. If you're watching and you're able to use the Q&A app on this, you know, Google Hangouts thing, feel free to ask your questions now. If you're watching on YouTube or another way that you could be watching, embedded at a website somewhere or whatever, you can send your, you know, if you have any questions right now, you can send them through on YouTube comments, through Google Hangouts, Google Plus, I believe will reach me. If you're a Jedi and we know each other, text me a message or a question rather. That's fine. You know, yeah, Facebook. You can use Facebook. That's fine. So I'm going to give you a second. Type those out if you have any. If we have any. we go through that? Anything? Nothing so far. Pretty boring. Pretty boring. So means it'll be a shorter video. Good for you guys watching on laters. All right. Oops, that's not the right one. That is the right one. Okay, so no questions. Looks like we're good. Fair deal. I don't know. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, right? I mean, when you really just stop and consider it for a second. Sure, you have a moment where a fictional Jedi is using it as justification, but I don't take, you know, infatuated teenagers' justification to be a good source of, you know, philosophical thought. It adds up, right? Compassion is certainly something that is there, and many Jedi do endorse compassion. But when you look at the Jedi rules of behavior, public service, the 5 goals of the Jedi, there's certainly a focus and a gear towards helping others and making the world a better place. I don't know why the connection is so bad today. I really don't. Yeah, it's enough freeze up. Okay, that's the Force telling me that my time's up. There's been a lot of freeze ups going on here, so I think that's a sign. I think that's a message received loud and clear. Yeah, be compassionate, sure, but don't be blinded, you know, by your emotional responses. You know, don't be blinded by that. It's not how Jedi approach things. It's pretty clear in all of our little philosophy teachings in our rundown. You feel emotion, but you don't let it control your knee-jerk reactions. So hopefully that clears that up. If you have any further questions, of course you can leave them in the comments below. You can approach it, the forums, the Facebook group, whatever, whatever medium you want to use to kind of discuss it, you can do that. And we'll leave it here. Thank you for watching.